Hey everybody, this is Gregory from Dapp University. So welcome back to this multi-part tutorial series where I'm showing you how to build your full stack Dapp, alright? So in this video, we're actually going to start building up the client side portion of this full stack Dapp, alright? So before we get into that, be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already and click the like button down below. And as always, if you want to learn how to become a highly paid blockchain developer, you need to join my free training on my website over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. All right, so now let's go ahead and start building out our client-side application, okay? So first and foremost, just make sure you've got Ganache running, all right? And also, make sure you've deployed the smart contracts to the blockchain, which we did in the last video, okay? So what I'm gonna do is actually open up a new tab here so that we can run the server that we're gonna use to develop our application, our client-side app. And I'm gonna start it like this. I'll say npm run start. All right, and what that's going to do is open up a browser for you. All right, now you should see your front-end application open with this boilerplate code from the starter kit that you installed at the beginning of this series. All right, so while we're here, let's go ahead and talk about MetaMask. This is a little fox icon up in the right-hand corner. So MetaMask is the browser extension that's going to turn your web browser into a blockchain browser. It's going to allow us to connect to Ganache, right? This right here. So what we want to do is take some of the accounts from Ganache and import them into MetaMask. I'm going to go ahead and copy this second account here. You can see this address. This is sort of like the username, but we want the account password essentially in order to rebuild it in MetaMask, in order to import it. So we'll show the private key. All right, so don't ever do this for a real account. And I should also say, you can import an account, a real account with a private key, but don't show anyone. That's what I mean. So for example, don't ever use this private key to store any real cryptocurrency, all right? Because everyone who watched this video has seen it. So we'll copy that, and we'll go to MetaMask, and we will import the account. I'm going to say import account, private key, paste it in here, import, all right? So I'm actually going to give this account a name. So click this menu here, click details, edit with the pencil icon, and we're going to call this the seller. This is going to make it easy to understand who's doing what in our scenario here. All right. And I'm going to import another account. So I'll take this account here, show the private key. Again, don't ever use this. And then import account. Say import account, private key, import. All right, we'll edit this hamburger icon, details, pencil, and then we'll call this the buyer. So let's switch back to the seller account. And let's connect to Ganache, all right? So you'll see this main Ethereum network, and you'll see Ropsten, Kovan, et cetera, We want to connect to localhost port 7545 because that's what Ganache is running on. So 127.0.0.1, all right, boom, there we go. Now we can see our balance from Ganache actually listed here, all right? And that means we are connected because it knows how much cryptocurrency we have in our wallet. And now our browser is actually talking to Ganache, right? So now we can get set up to run this blockchain app. Okay, so this is the boilerplate code that from the starter kit that you installed at the very beginning of this tutorial series, right? So if you go inside of your app, your code, let's go back to code here and open this in Sublime Text. Let's say subl dot to open this in Sublime Text. And if you go to the source directory and you see components, right, this app.js file, this is all the code that you see visually on the screen here. It's all the HTML. What do we got here? Well, we've got Bootstrap wired up for us, right? The templating framework, so we don't have to write a bunch of HTML and CSS ourselves. It looks nice already, so that's good. And we're using React.js, okay? So if you look at this, you can see some JavaScript code mixed with this HTML, right? That's just how React works. So don't worry if you don't know React, if you haven't built an app in React before. I'm gonna teach you everything you need to know to follow along with this tutorial and get started, okay? So let's briefly take a look at React. So React is a component-based library in JavaScript that's used for building user interfaces. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. We're building a user interface for this blockchain application, this Dapp, that talks to Ethereum smart contracts for our marketplace, okay? So it's component-based, basically components are the fundamental building blocks of React applications. All right, you can see this HTML code mixed in with JavaScript. It's all kind of intermingled together. You see this class hello message extends React component. That's how you define a React component, and you can just see this result here. Here's the real basic HTML. See this .props.name. I'll explain all this as we go. Okay. Also, React also has a state for each component. So what do I mean by that? Well, web applications need to manage state, right? They don't persist across web page refreshes. And we want to basically mirror the state of the blockchain inside of our app. So what do I mean by that? Basically, our marketplace, has products in it. We want our front-end app to list those products, a lot of people to buy those products. And how does it know, how many products are in the list? Well, we can use the React state object to mirror the products that are actually, contained in our smart contract on the blockchain. And I'll show you how to do that. So here's a real brief example. Here's, this.state equals this inside this constructor function. We're going to do something just like this in a few minutes. And that's how it manages this to-do list, right? How does it know how many items are on the to-do list? How can you add new ones, right? So item 3, let's add it, right? How does it know how to do that? Well, it does that with the state object. So you'll see that in action here momentarily, all right? So all this, if I didn't mention already, this is JSX syntax, which allows us to write JavaScript inside these curly braces mixed in with HTML, right, inside this React code. So that's the templating language that we'll use. So like I said, don't worry if you don't know React, you haven't built an app in React yet. I'm gonna teach you everything you need to know. If you have built an app in React, you should feel right at home, okay? So let's go ahead and go to our project. Let's just change some code to make sure that, we can see our changes reflected in our browser. I'm going to go ahead and change the name on this nav bar, right? So find this nav right here, and let's just change the name. So say Dapp University's Blockchain Marketplace. You can call yours whatever you'd want to, but that's what I'm going to do. So let's see. All right, boom, there you go. Dapp University's Blockchain Marketplace. Notice I didn't even have to refresh the page. The server already does that for us. You can go here and it already does that for us, all right? So I'll clear all this, all right? So now let's actually, the next thing we want to do is wire up this component to talk to the blockchain, all right? So inside of here, you'll notice I can collapse this render function to see how simple this React component really is. Basically, we just import React and component with inside JavaScript like this. All right, we got a logo inside of here. We got a CSS file, but basically all the component is just this class, right, that extends component, and it's got this render function. Right, this render function just lays out all this HTML inside of here. Okay, so we can wire up the component to talk to the blockchain with another function, all right? We're actually going to use web3.js to talk to the blockchain, and we're going to create a new function inside of this component to load web3, okay? So we'll just call the function load web3, all right? And we will do it inside of here. So we're going to use the async await pattern just like we did in our tests. So I'll call this async load web3. All right, so in order to do this, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. MetaMask has actually provided a way for you to connect your web apps to the blockchain with web3.js. Okay, so if you go to this blog post, this is floating around the web. You can just copy the tutorial example in the description below to get this. But they actually suggest how you should do this, right? There's this code example here. So I'll just copy this. And we'll go to our web app and we'll paste it in. All right. So don't worry if this looks giant and scary and you don't understand any of it. That's okay. I'll briefly explain what's happening here. So basically, you can detect MetaMask a few different ways, right? So for modern Dapp browsers, there's a window.ethereum property, right? And if that exists, you instantiate your connection like this, all right? For legacy Dapp browsers, there's a window.web3 property, all right? And if that's the case, you instantiate your connection like this, all right? And if neither of those exists, you know that you don't have MetaMask installed and you want to, do something about it. So they just console log. All right, so I actually want to adapt this code for our specific app, and you can find this in the code examples for this section down in the description below. So I'm just going to paste it in and explain it that way. All right, so like I said, for modern Dapp browsers, if window.ethereum exists, we're going to create a new connection to the blockchain with Web3 like this. All right, so window.web3 is going to equal new Web3, and then we're going to pass in window.ethereum because we have it here, and we're going to enable it. So if that doesn't exist, we're going to look for window.web3, and we're going to instantiate a new connection with the current provider, which we grab from Web3 like this. Right? If neither of those exist, we're going to raise an alert that, hey, there's no MetaMask installed, you should install it. Okay. So we also need to import Web3 to make this work. So go to the top, and just below React, we're going to import Web3. Right? We've already installed this inside of our package.json file here. Right? So Web3 is down here. And we can just import it like that. All right, so now let's actually, let's call this, right? We've defined it, but we haven't actually called it. So we're gonna create a new function called component will mount. We're gonna run it async because we'll use the async await pattern. All right, so I didn't just make this name up. This is actually a function that comes with React component, right? Just like render. And this is a lifecycle method in React, which basically means this is a function that gets run anytime this component is getting created, right? And specifically, when it's going to mount, this function is going to get called. There's several other lifecycle functions for React components you can read about in the React documentation, but basically just know that this is what we want to do to load our Web3 connection. So say await this.load Web3. All right. So save that, and we'll go to our app here and see that nothing's broken. So we can console log it. We could say console log window.web3. All right, there we go. All right, so we've loaded a Web3 connection. Next, let's check the Web3 connection even more and actually fetch the account, right? So let's make sure that MetaMask works by seeing if we can retrieve this account address here and listing it out on the page. Okay, so that'll be our next task. So we'll create a new function down here called async load blockchain data. And this is where we'll actually fetch information out of Web3 and get the account. So we'll start off by saying const web3 equals window.web3. We're just going to stash that here, right? Because we're attached to window at this point. And let's get the account like this. So we'll say load account. It will say const accounts equals web3, or await web3 eth get accounts. So this is a function under the eth namespace for Web3. All right, so what we'll do is console log accounts here. So what this does is returns all the accounts from our wallet. Our wallet in this case is MetaMask. And so it should just expose one account. All right, so we didn't actually call this. So we defined the function, we haven't called it yet. We'll do it like this, await this.load blockchain data. All right. All right, so looks like we got an issue here. Web3 get account is not defined, so this is plural. Sorry, guys. All right, boom, there we go. There's our account, right? So A668. If you go to Ganache, you'll see A668. Yep, that's the seller account. Okay, that's what we expect. So now what we want to do is actually just get a single account, right? Accounts was an array. So we can get the first account like this, right? This is a zero-based index array. So what we want to do is actually store this inside of our component state. So remember I said that a minute ago in React. Let's see here. We've got a component state which we can use, right? We can set it up like this. We can create a default state with this constructor function, and we can, set stuff in the state like this. So this dot state equals this. We can set state, which I'll show you in a minute. Okay. So first, let's go ahead and create the constructor like React told us to. So we'll say constructor, and we're going to pass in props. We'll say super props So don't worry if you don't understand this just yet. Just bear with me. I will say this state equals account. All right. So what we want to do is actually update this value. Okay. So let's do it like this. We'll say this.setState, right? This is a function that React already knows about inside the component. And we're going to, basically just pass in a JavaScript object with a key of account. All right. And we're going to read out of the accounts and do it that way. All right. So this.setState account. All right. And then we can actually access this value from state in our side of our component like this, right? Well, let's just create a new place on the nav bar. Let's just say, let's just do a paragraph tag for now. We'll format this more, but we'll actually list that like this. So we use these JSX brackets, right, to put JavaScript inside of here. We'll say this.state.account. All right, so let's go refresh the page. It's going to look ugly, probably, but let's just see if it worked. All right, you can actually see it. Boom, there it is. It's kind of dark, but it's listed out on the page. All right, awesome. So I want to clean this up a little bit. Instead of just putting this in a yucky paragraph tag here, let's actually put it inside of a UL that Bootstrap knows about. All right, so here's a better formatting. So this is something that Bootstrap gives us by default. If you go check their navbar examples, it'll show you how to do this. Or you can just copy this code out of the code examples, okay? So I did this data account, but I put it inside of here. It's gonna look nicer. All right, there you go. So that looks a lot better. We have a nice legible account here. It's sort of like seeing your username at the top of a web application. Okay, so the next thing I wanna do is actually update this constructor here. We had, a default account. I'm going to add some more values here. So I'm going to fill these in just for the future. All right. So whenever we load stuff from the blockchain, we're going to get the product count, right? And it's going to be 0 by default if there's no products. Also, if there's no products, the products are going to be an empty array. All right. And by default, we want the app to be loading. So we're going to update all these values later, but I'm going to go ahead and just set this default state for now so we don't have to keep going back and changing it. So this is jumping ahead a little bit, but I would recommend just going and filling this out so we don't get confused later. Okay. All right, so next thing I want to do is actually load the smart contract from the blockchain. We got the account. Now we want to get the smart contract. So we need two pieces of information. We need the smart contract ABI, and we need the address. So what do I mean by that? If you go to this marketplace.json file here, you'll see the ABI, right? This is the abstract binary interface. This basically just describes, the functions of the smart contract, what it does, all that kind of stuff. And then the address, which is down here. I'm going to minimize a bunch of this stuff. All right, address is here. Boom. So here's the ABI, here's the address. So we can actually read this JSON file in our React component to fetch this ABI out. We can also fetch this address. We have to get into this networks key here. So what this file does is it manages where this smart contract is on multiple networks. This could be on the main net. It could be on a test network. But here it's on Ganache, which is network ID 5777, and we can dig into this to find the address of the smart contract deployed to Ganache, right? And Web3 needs both of those pieces of information in order to fetch the smart contract and actually use it, the ABI and the address. So let's actually get both of those things. The first thing we want to do is import the marketplace like this, all right? That just gets the marketplace file. Goes up a directory and then looks down into ABIs and fetches marketplace.json, all right? And then we're going to actually get the marketplace like this. Let's just go to load blockchain data, and we can, say like marketplace ABI. So let's just console log that. Save that and go back to our app. All right, so here's the ABI. We can see the information about it. Boom, that's working. So now we need to get the address. So we can say console log ABI and then say console log marketplace dot networks. And we can say 57 and then address. All right. So boom, there you go. There's the address of the smart contract. So we need both those pieces of information in order to instantiate the smart contract. So what we could do is create the new smart contract like this. We can basically say const marketplace equals web3.eth marketplace, or sorry, contract, capital C. Pass in the ABI. So marketplace, we'll say ABI and address. So say const ABI, const address. Say this. All right. And then we'll console log see here. All right, boom, there we go. So there's our actual smart contract. So that's how we load it from the blockchain. All right. So that's a quick way to load the smart contract from the blockchain, but this is too brittle, right? We don't want to hard code the network because yours might be different than mine. If we deploy this to a test network, it might change, all right? So what we want to do is actually detect the network dynamically. So I'm going to do this. So const network ID equals web3 eth, it's called web3eth.net get ID, and we want to use await here. All right, so I could also just pass in this network ID like this. Boom. Let's try it again. All right, so it still worked. We're not console logging marketplace, but that's okay. We can console log the network ID just to be sure. Should be 5777. All right, boom, there we go. All right, so that's working just fine. So this is also brittle because if we're on a different network, then this would potentially be, it would be empty and we wouldn't have address available here. So what I want to do is basically do this, move this out, and say const contract data equals marketplace networks, or I say network data. All right. And then we'll say if network data, if not, let's do something else here. Sorry, guys. Okay, so let's move some of this code inside of here. So I don't need to do this quite so much. And then we'll say network data. All right. That's how we're going to log this out, all right? So we can say console log marketplace. All right, so now let's see if this works. I might have made a mistake, but no, worked just fine. Awesome. So what I want to do, so see if that makes sense. Like you can pause the video if you want to and look at this. So basically, we want to just make sure that the contract's actually deployed to the network. Because look what happens if it's not, right? If I just took this out and saved this like this and didn't put this inside of an if else, if we go to like the mainnet or something like that, let's go to mainnet. Let's refresh the page. Then like boom, our app's going to blow up. Okay. So we can fix this problem. Let's put this back inside of here. All right. So if network data, else what we want to do is alert the user that the contract's not deployed to the network. All right, just like this. Boom. Window.alert marketplace contract not deployed to detected network. So save that. Refresh the page. Still on mainnet. And then boom, there you go. Marketplace contract not deployed to detected network. Now, if you click OK, your app's probably, it works just fine. But now if we go back to Ganache and then refresh the page, boom, works just fine. All right. And then we can actually, console log marketplace here. All right, boom, awesome. So we've actually talked to the smart contract and wired it up inside this application. All right. So that's pretty good progress for today, guys. We have, loaded the account from the blockchain. We've also loaded the smart contract. Really quickly before we go, let's clean things up just a little bit. What I want to do is actually move this nav bar into its own component here. All right. So what I'm going to do is copy this, create a new file here. Oops. And then I'm going to say navbar.js. All right. I'm going to paste all this code inside of here. I'm just going to start deleting things. So take out all this. Basically, we just want the React component stuff. We don't want any of this. All right. I'm going to take the nav bar and minimize it so that we can copy this information. Let's go ahead and bump this over. All right. So copy this out. Take out all this junk from the return function. All right, so this is what we want. Basically, we're going to turn this into navbar. And I'm going to put the navbar code back in here. All right, so what I want to do is basically just like clean this up to have multiple components so we don't see all this code on the page at one time. We're going to keep adding to this as we keep building out our marketplace. And I want to, show you how React components work and how you can, use them as, modules, essentially. So inside of here, we need to fix this. We don't know about this .state account anymore because we haven't assigned the account to this component state. But React allows us to pass variables down to subcomponents with this props right here, right? So that's what I was talking about inside this constructor. You see props. So we can delete this nav, right? And then render this nav inside of here and then pass the variables down, right? So the first thing we want to do is take the nav bar, import it like this, and we want to put it here. We do this with JSX. It looks kind of like HTML, nav bar. And then we can pass the account down like this. Account equals this.state.account. Right, because that's what we saw in our previous example. And then we can go to the navbar component and say this.props.account. All right, so if I did everything correctly, this should just work. The app should look just like it did because it's simply refactoring. All right, looks like it still works. Awesome. So that's all I got for today, guys. Again, you can check out the code example for this section down below. As always, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Watch for that next video in this series when it comes out. And if you want to learn how to become a highly paid blockchain developer, you should join my free training on my website over at dappuniversity.com/bootcamp. All right, until next time, thanks for watching Dapp University.